You surviving is purely an accident. 3 million years ago, if a rock had rolled 1 meter to the left, neither you nor the entire human civilization would exist. This isn't superstition. It's a conclusion from Oxford University in 2015. They discovered a 50-kilometer wide dirt path on Earth that determined the fate of all Homo sapiens. This path is called the Isthmus of Panama. The moment it rose from the seabed, it cut the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans apart. Ocean currents were forced to divert. Snow began to fall at the North Pole, and it kept falling for 3 million years. The Ice Age arrived. Africa's forests turned into grasslands. Our ancestors were forced to climb down from trees. They began walking upright. They began evolving brains. Without that path, there'd be no Ice Age. No Ice Age. And humans would never have become human. You're watching this video now because 3 million years ago, that rock happened to roll 1 meter to the right. But the story is far from that simple. This dirt path that changed humanity's fate. Its very birth was a geological war lasting 24 million years. Let's rewind to 150 million years ago. At that time, South America was still nestled in the embrace of the Gondwana supercontinent. Then the plates split apart. South America was flung away, drifting alone at sea for tens of millions of years, with no land connecting to it. It was like a giant prison, locking away its animals for 60 million years. What can happen in 60 million years? Evolution went haywire. South America gave rise to a 2-meter-tall killer bird, scientifically named Phorusrhacidae, but scientists prefer calling it the terror bird. This thing couldn't fly, but it ran faster than you on a bicycle. Its beak was like a curved knife, designed specifically to smash prey skulls. What's scarier? It had no natural enemies. In South America, the terror bird sat at the top of the food chain, ruling for tens of millions of years. Besides the terror bird, there was also the glyptodon, which looked like a Volkswagen Beetle car, covered in bony armor. Even saber-toothed tigers couldn't bite through it. And the giant ground sloth, 3 meters tall, standing taller than Yao Ming. Its claws could tear tree trunks to shreds. South America's animals were more and more outrageous, more and more insane, but they didn't know that to the north, there was an even tougher crowd, waiting to meet them. The home of the North American saber-toothed cat. This feline's canine teeth were 20 centimeters long, capable of piercing any animal's throat in a single bite. And there were dire wolves, hunting in packs, targeting large prey. Not to mention the giant elephants with tusks. The gomphotheres, 4-meter-high mobile fortresses. 2 continents, 2 completely different ecosystems, separated by a vast ocean. Neither could see the other. Neither could fight the other. Then the Isthmus of Panama rose up. This didn't happen overnight. 24 million years ago, the Caribbean plate began subducting under the South American plate. Volcanoes started erupting, magma piled up, and the seafloor began to rise. At first, there were just a few islands, scattered above the surface. Between the islands, seawater could still flow freely, but the volcanoes didn't stop. Magma kept gushing out, and the islands grew in number, larger and denser. By 15 million years ago, these islands had formed a broken chain. Scientists call it Lake Panama. At this point, some bold animals started island hopping, swimming from one island to another, then crawling from that island to the next. But most animals still couldn't cross, because the straits between the islands were too deep, and the currents too strong. You can imagine a terror bird standing at the edge of an island, staring at the land across, wanting to cross, but unable to. It's like seeing a table full of delicious food through a glass, but the door is locked. Time kept passing. 9 million years ago, the deepest strait was finally sealed. Deep-sea creatures were completely cut off. The Atlantic and Pacific began to become 2 different oceans, but shallow-sea creatures could still visit each other, because there were still some shallows and gaps. Then, 3 million years ago, the final gap closed. The Isthmus of Panama was officially formed. What happened next? Biologists named the Great American Biotic Interchange. The name sounds very academic, but the reality was akin to a world war. Northern saber-toothed tigers charged into South America. They found it was practically paradise. Everywhere they looked, prey that had never encountered a predator. The animals that had ruled South America for tens of millions of years had no idea how to deal with such killers. Giant ground sloths were hunted down one by one. Toxodonts were flipped over and disemboweled. Even the terror birds suffered. You heard that right. 2-meter-tall terror birds were driven back by saber-toothed tigers and dire wolves. They had reigned for 60 million years, only to go extinct in just a few million years. But South American animals weren't pushovers either. Giant armadillos fought their way north north into North America. Porcupine relatives also moved north. The most successful was an animal called the terror pig. They established a foothold in North America and survived for millions of years. This was the largest biological invasion in Earth's history. Species from two continents clashed fiercely, merged, and replaced each other. Ultimately, the northern predators won this war. 70% of South America's native large mammals went extinct. But these were just appetizers. The real event happened in the ocean. Look, before the Panama Land Bridge formed, warm tropical waters flowed freely between the Atlantic and Pacific. This was like Earth's air conditioning system, distributing heat evenly. But when the land rose up, this water route was blocked. Warm seawater was forced to change course. It couldn't go west anymore, so it had to turn north. This current grew stronger and stronger, eventually forming what we know today as the Gulf Stream. The Gulf Stream carried vast amounts of warm water to the North Atlantic, toward Greenland, and near the Arctic Circle. Warm water means massive evaporation. Massive evaporation means massive water vapor. Massive water vapor means massive snowfall. Here's the key point. It started snowing in the Arctic, and it snowed so much that summer couldn't melt it all. The first year, some snow accumulated. The second year, another layer piled on. Year after year, snow on top of snow. The snow at the bottom was compressed into ice. Ice sheets began to spread, expanding southward from the Arctic. 2.7 million years ago, Earth officially entered the Quaternary Ice Age. This is what that 50-kilometer-wide dirt road did. But the story doesn't end there. The Ice Age didn't just make the Earth colder. It also completely transformed Africa's landscape. Think about it. Global cooling changed rainfall patterns. Africa's rainforests began to shrink, turning into vast stretches of savanna. The apes that once lived in trees found themselves without a home. The forests were gone. Were you going to stay on the branches and starve? So they were forced to come down, forced to stand upright, forced to learn to walk and run on the open grasslands, forced to use their forelimbs to grasp tools instead of branches. This series of forcing eventually turned apes into humans. So you see, human birth wasn't some great evolutionary choice. It was forced out by a dirt road. But here's a huge doubt. In the 1970s, scientists established a timeline. From deep-sea sediment cores, the Isthmus of Panama closed 3 million years ago. This conclusion dominated academia for 40 years. All textbooks said so. All papers cited it. Then in 2015, two bombshells dropped. The first came from paleontologists. They analyzed fossil records from hundreds of sites, on both continents, and discovered a startling fact. Some animals didn't wait until 3 million years ago to start migrating. The earliest migration records go back 20 million years, with another wave at 6 million years. What does this mean? Either these animals could swim across oceans, or the land bridge formed much earlier than we thought. The second bomb came from geologists. In 15-million-year-old river sediments in South America, they found tiny crystals called zircons. These zircons had a unique chemical fingerprint that could only come from Panama's volcanic rocks. The question was, how did the zircons get to South America? Only one possibility. A river carried them there. And for a river to flow from Panama to South America, the two landmasses had to be connected. Panama was already connected 15 million years ago. Now scientists were baffled. If the isthmus formed that early, why did large-scale animal migrations wait until 3 million years ago? If the land bridge formed that early, why did marine life not start differentiating until 3 million years ago? The two timelines were completely contradictory, but the evidence on both sides was solid. The answer finally came from an unexpected place: Indonesia. Scientists noticed that the Indonesian archipelago was strikingly similar to ancient Panama. Indonesia is also a chain of volcanic islands, with deep straits between the islands. Marine life can freely cross these straits, but land animals were trapped on their respective islands, unable to cross. The famous Wallace Line lies right here. The animal species on either side of the line are completely different. Why? Because the ocean currents in the strait were too strong. Animals couldn't swim across. This inspired scientists. The closure of the Isthmus of Panama didn't happen all at once. It happened in stages. The latest model goes like this. 24 million years ago, volcanic islands began to emerge above the sea surface. But deep-sea channels still existed between the islands. Seawater flowed freely. 15 million years ago, the islands had already linked into a chain. Some land animals began island hopping to migrate, but most still couldn't get across. 9 million years ago, the deep-sea channels closed. Deep-sea creatures were cut off. 3 million years ago, the last shallow sea channel also closed. The isthmus was completely sealed. The Great Animal Migration officially erupted. This explains all the contradictory evidence. A 50-kilometer wide strip of land, a 24 million year long slow formation process, a biological invasion of the largest scale in history, a major global ocean current reorganization, a trigger for an ice age, a chain reaction that turned apes into humans. All of this happened because undersea volcanoes decided to erupt at that exact spot. If the volcanoes had erupted 100 kilometers to the east, the two oceans might have remained connected forever. If the volcanoes had erupted 100 kilometers to the west, the isthmus might have formed earlier or later. If the timing of ocean current diversion had been slightly different, the ice age might never have happened. If the ice age hadn't happened, Africa's forests might have remained forever lush, and apes might have stayed in the trees forever. The fact that you are standing here now, holding your phone and watching this video, is the result of countless coincidences stacking up. 3 million years ago, that rock happened to roll 1 meter to the right.